Welcome to your College-Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
My name is Linda, and I'm originally from Michigan, now living in the St. Louis metro area. I'm a college coach with School Match for You and have a daughter at University of Chicago.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of two daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy has a bachelor's degree from the University of Georgia and a master's degree from North Carolina State University. She works in private practice in Raleigh as a mental health therapist. And I'm so blessed to be able to work alongside both my beautiful daughters at School Match for You, a college counseling firm that I founded in 2010. Good morning, friends. Every Monday I get the privilege of coming to you, and it's always exhilarating. I can think of one or two times out of 370 episodes when I didn't feel that way, and it was only when I found out Colby Bryant had been in a plane crash just before I had to record. That's the only one that comes to mind. And then another time when I was fighting some sickness. But this is a real privilege, a real honor. I'm really excited about today's episode. I'll start out by sharing a few things with you about our podcast as well as SpeakPipe. And then I'm very excited to talk to you about a new income-driven repayment plan that is going to help so many people in so many ways and literally may make a difference between whether you decide to take out a student loan or not take a student loan. So I want to make sure that everybody understands it. It's called the SAVE plan. And then we'll have the last segment in Lisa's interview with Dr. Erik Neubuehl, the Associate Vice Chancellor at East Carolina. And of course, they're talking about the importance of student engagement and the correlation between student engagement and student success. But I start out with a few announcements. And I say this with great humility and great gratitude, but we had over 51,000 downloads in the last 30 days. That's the most we've ever had. And I'm humbled by that because in February of 2018, we had 218. So to go from 218 to 51,000, the way that happens is by everybody functioning like a listening family and by having you go into your Facebook and your social media groups and tell people about your college-bound kid. I literally was just reading an email from a Dallas listener literally before I came on here who was telling me about, I send links to one of my really good friends and our kids play sports together and I'm always sending links to your podcast. I mean, that's how we grow. And so I say with great thankfulness and gratitude, thank you so much for spreading the word. I also want to give an update on SpeakPipe. So, we had the free SpeakPipe membership, and we've upgraded to the paid version. So what does that mean? Well, one thing it means for you is SpeakPipe won't cut you off after 90 seconds. The new paid version allows up to 5 minutes of recording. We don't necessarily always want to pay a 5-minute question, but there have been times people have been cut off at the 90-second, and I wish that they could have had another 15 or 20 seconds to finish their thought. From time to time, we still get somebody who sends in a question in writing. We are only playing SpeakPipe questions right now for our question from the listener, and we're doing that for a few reasons. One, we just think it makes for a better podcast. So many people have said that they love it. I know our whole team loves it. We like to hear the different voices. It makes us feel more like a community. And you've proven that you have no problem with it because maybe my timing's off here, but it feels like it's been 6, 7, 8 months at max we've had SpeakPipe. And we're up to 94 questions. We're about to bust through that 100 question mark. So you guys have proven you can do it. Every once in a while, someone will write an email and they say, listen, I'm sending my question in email because I'm just too shy. And I always tell people two things. One, use a pseudonym if you're concerned about putting your name out there. And second, have somebody else read it for you. But if you want us to take your question and answer it, you're going to have to use SpeakPipe. And we're thankful that 94 of you have already done that. All right. I am excited to talk to you about this new income-driven repayment plan. One of the things I always struggle with on the podcast is how much time and attention do we give to the topic of paying for college? It's a really important topic. And it's been a while since we've come on here either with a thought leader to address something related for paying for college. There are a few things we really need to do. I know we had Mark Kantrowitz on talking about FAFSA simplification, but there have been some changes. So that's an important interview that we need to get to you. Also, an important interview we need to have, and there was a request from a listener, is breaking down how to read financial statements so that you as a listener can go look at financial statements and assess the health of the institution that your students are considering. Or for you college counselors, skills to help you. Another tool in your tool bag, how do you read a financial statement to tell if a school is thriving or floundering? So those are a few things that I know we need to do. But there's been so much going on when it comes to student loans. And we've just really touched on it, haven't really hit it as thoroughly as we should. Of course, many of you know that Biden had a plan that would have impacted more than 40 million borrowers. And Congress shot it down, saying he never had the authority to do it. But fortunately, what they've come up with instead is by far, the best income-driven repayment plan for student loans. So first of all, let me just start with what is an income-driven payment plan. Well, what an income-driven repayment plan does, it allows your monthly payment to be adjusted to your family size and your adjusted gross income, your discretionary money. And one of the many reasons why I'm an advocate of federal loans over private loans when it comes to borrowing for college, one of them, no cosigner. I had a conversation literally recording this Sunday morning. I had someone local. Don't have very many people local. I actually thought they were in Newton, Massachusetts, based on the phone number, but they used to live there. But they said, no, I'm in Peachtree City, which is a place about 12, 14 miles from here. And they said, and I like to meet people in person. So they came by and they met me in person. This isn't a podcast listener. And they've been referred by a family that is a doctor and endocrinologist in the area. And so I'm having a conversation with them, and they're like, I'm concerned about my son having $300,000 of debt. And I said, well, your son can't have $300,000 of debt. There's federal caps on how much they can borrow. And they capped out at $27,000 over 4 years, $31,000 over 5. You would be incurring the debt because you would have to be a cosigner. So anyway, I like federal loans, no cosigner, no credit check, fixed rates, flexible rates, potential for forbearance and deferment, and potential for income-driven repayments. The ability to have your actual payment adjusted to your income. And that can really keep a loan from being onerous. Income-driven repayments are not new, and they're not new to our podcast. If you go back and look, you'll see Emily Griffin was on. We've gone deep on the income-tingent repayment, on the income-based repayment. We've talked about the graduated payment, the standard payment. We've talked about the extended payment. We've talked about Payee, which is one of the pay-as-you-earn program. Okay. We've talked about all these different things before on the podcast, and there's been a place for them. I wouldn't have had them on to discuss these different income-driven repayment plans that are offered through federal loans. But nothing is as good as the Biden new plan, this program. And the program goes by the name SAVE, S-A-V-E. And today I want to really break it down for you so you understand it, because I am not somebody who thinks a student should never borrow for college. Paying for college is assumed to be a joint responsibility between the students and the parents. Oftentimes I'll have a family say, in fact, I had it this week. I had a family, a California family, and they said, paying more than $30,000 is going to be tough for us. We could do it if we had to, but that's going to stretch us for college. And I said, are you talking about you paying or you and your student? No, they said us. They said we could probably go to 45, but 30 would really be probably our comfort level. And I say this with all the families I work with. I said, well, the formula assumes a joint responsibility between the student and the parent. A student can take out the federal direct student loan. It'll cap you at $27,000 over 4 years, or an average of $6,750. Even that you don't get $6,750 over, each year is different. It starts out $5,500, goes to $6,500, then $7,500, then $7,500. That's an average of $6,750. I say a student can take out $6,750. Both my kids did it. And if you're not comfortable with them having a loan, you can do what I did. I told my parents a few things too, but I told my kids, you graduate and I'll pay 80% of your loan, you pay 20%. There's research that shows that when students pay a portion of college, they graduate at a higher rate. I believe in the concept of skin in the game. So I had both my kids do it because I believe in it. But I said to this family, your student can take out that loan. Now they're contributing $6,750. There's also research that shows students that work under 15 hours a week have higher grade point averages. They can work 10 to 15 hours during the school year, during the 31 to 33 weeks. Your student's actually in school. Okay, that's going to be another $3,000 to $4,000, depending on where they're working, maybe more. And then they can make a small contribution during summer work. I get they want to have some money to have pizzas and movies and go to the beaches. I get it, but they can make $1,000 to $1,500 that can go to college. So if your student does all of that, they're bringing about $12,000 to the table. So there's a whole lot of colleges we can look at. If we go with your low number of 30 and throw in 12 from your student at 42, or if we go with your high number 45 and throw in 12 at 57, there's a whole bunch of colleges that are going to come into play at 42 to 57,000 that won't come into play 30,000, especially if we're talking out of state. And when I talk money, I only talk cost of attendance, by the way. That means tuition. That means meals and housing. That means student fees. That means books and supplies. That means personal miscellaneous and transportation books. All of it. Every penny. That's the only way I talk when I talk cost of college. So I'm a believer in that. And I believe in challenging students. And I know some parents, and I know it's ultimately a family decision because I work with people that are anti-loan. And normally it's for good reason. It's normally because they felt saddled by their loan debt deep into their adult years, and they don't want to have to do that for the kid. So, one option is to do what I do with my kids. They let them handle this best loan on the front end, and then later when they're out of the house and, you're not paying thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of dollars for them for everything, you can just pay 80% of it back or whatever you do. Some people do 50-50. So I'm a believer in looking at student loans. Paying for college is assumed to be 3 components: grants and scholarships, loans, and work. That's the assumption. That's what aid is. Aid is not just grants and scholarships. It's also self-help. But the better the loan, the more the interest. I'm not interested in bad loans at all. Don't like private loans, and I don't like Parent Plus loans at all, and I don't like loans with really high interest rates. And I don't like loans that have lack of flexibility. So what is it about this SAVE plan that has me so excited? Well, first of all, let me tell you what SAVE plan stands for. So SAVE, which I think is a smart branding name to begin with, and that's actually important if you want to see your plans propagate. It stands for Saving on a Valuable Education. SAVE, Saving on a Valuable Education Repayment Plan. And I'm going to tell you why I'm so excited about this plan. In preparation for this, I looked at a lot of things. I looked at several Wall Street Journal articles, several articles right from studentaid.gov, one on NerdWallet, somebody called the Money Librarian that's got some really good material on this, sort of an amalgamation of pulling it together, all of it. And of course, I've been following it for some time because the program just went live September of 2023, and it continues to have more benefits that will get rolled out in July of 2024. Now, before I get into this, I will say this. Before you commit to a plan, you should meet with your loan servicer or at least the Department of Education to go over all your options. The truth of the matter is, just from the bottom line, will I pay more out of pocket with SAVE or with one of these other plans? And around 90% of the time, SAVE is going to be your best bet. But particularly if you're a high income earner and if you just want to get your loan paid off as soon as possible, it is possible that the standard repayment plan is going to be a better option for you. Once again, if all this is confusing, with the standard plan, you have 10 equal payments, fixed income. You know what you're, so similar to a mortgage. Let's say you have a fixed mortgage. You know exactly what your mortgage payment is, 10 payments, done. You can always pay it off without prepayment penalties. If you're a high income earner who's got job stability and your goal is just to get it over as soon as possible, you may actually pay less money, less out of pocket when you count interest with just going with the standard plan. It's highly unlikely, though, that all the other payments plans that are out there, and there's a lot of them, graduated payment, extended payment, it's hard to see that Save is not blowing those plans away. Also, pay as you earn. It's going to blow that one away in most cases. And all the other plans that are out there, ICR, IBR. So really, I think you can almost reduce the options to Save, the best in 90% of cases, and the standard repayment. I'm sure there may be some unique scenario where one of those other payment plans could be the best, but I'm not aware of one. Like when I look at this, it's either Save or standard. And some cases, even with standard, even when it's best, people may not want to do it because you may say, well, I'm a high income earner and I just want to get it done right away. But what if your income changes? I mean, the nice thing with Save is, you know, you're settled, you're locked in. All right, let's get into the details. I want to see why I'm so excited about this. All right, let's talk about this. So in the past, with the other income-based repayment plans, it was great that you would have a low payment, but your interest was still being capitalizing. So there were instances where people have been making a low payment for 10 years and your balance is actually higher than it was before you started. Now, that's one of the reasons why people treated loans a lot of times like they did with homes during the financial crisis, where a lot of people said, I'm out of here. I'm foreclosing. I see no future in sight. This is ridiculous. But with the new Save plan, your loan balance after you make your payment is not being capitalized. So it is not increasing on your unpaid loan balances. That is an incredible new perk. All right, there's just so many reasons why I love this plan. That's a huge one. Let me give you another one. The other income payment plans, they all shielded some of your money to not have to go toward the loan. Everybody understands the concept of there has to be a protection allowance or a shield. But that shield was typically 150% of the poverty line. So what am I? Let's give an example. Let's say you're a family of two. Okay. 150% of the poverty line is approximately $29,000. So in the previous plans, the first $29,000 of your income was, none of it was expected to go back to you paying your loan because you gotta live, you gotta eat. But in Save, it protects 225% of your income. And some of these benefits for Save, by the way, do kick in July 2024. Some of them kicked in already this September. So now let's take a family of two. Instead of the first $29,000 not going toward your loan balance, your loan payment, the first $44,000 is not going toward your loan. Can make $44,000, family of two, and pay nothing toward your income-driven repayment. And okay, but you're still on the clock toward loan forgiveness. That zero payment counts toward loan forgiveness. Now, I know $44,000 is not a lot, but you're going to see another benefit in a second, that this plan is better on balances above the protected amount. And I also want to say something. The $44,000 is not $44,000 of gross income. It's adjusted gross. Now you say, what's the difference? I'm not an accountant. Okay, you have certain pre-tax benefits that decrease your taxable income. You have certain benefits that reduce your taxable income, and that's your adjusted gross. I'll give you 3 right off the top. Your interest on your student loan, that is tax deductible. So that reduces your gross income to your adjusted gross income. I'll give you another one. If you have a health savings account, now the caps for health savings account go up every year, but it's around $4,000 right now for a single person and approximately double that for a married couple. So there's $4,000 more of income that doesn't go toward paying your loan. And I'll give you another one, a traditional IRA. So if you put your money into a retirement account, an IRA, you don't use the Roth, which uses after-tax money. You go for the traditional. There you go. There's another $6,000. So you take that $6,000 plus the $4,000. Let's say you do a health savings account and the interest on your loan. Your income could be, $55,000, and none of that is touched. And there's other things too, like alimony and other things. But the bottom line is it's your adjusted gross, not your gross. So it shields 225%, not 150%. That's huge. Here's another one. You can now connect your IRS account to your loan payment. Do you know how much easier that is to renew? Because one of the things with these payments is once a year, they check your income to figure out how much income you have above your adjusted gross for your family size to figure out what your payment's going to be. And one of the big problems is it was a manual process, and if people didn't do it, then they lapsed, and then they lost the benefits, and that was a massive problem. But now, as long as you're filing taxes and you connect your IRS account, it automatically syncs it, and it just goes on autopilot. It's like one of my favorite things about driving is cruise control. I love cruise control. It's one of the big disagreements that Nietzsche and I have. She doesn't like it. I love it. You just set that baby on and rest your foot. You're good. All right, here's another big perk about Save. Married people that file separately, they're now no longer required to use their spouse's income. That was one of the problems with some of the IDRs. You have one, let's say you're using an IDR, income-driven repayment plan. Let's say you make $50,000, but let's say your spouse makes $125,000. Now you got to factor their income in. Now, when they look at the amount of your discretionary money after the protected amount, it's going to mean you're going to have a really high payment. But now, even if you file taxes separately, you're not required to use your spouse's income. And they say the hits just keep on coming. It just gets better and better. Now, here's another one. This is incredible. So before I said first 44,000 is protected, family of 2, adjust it. Maybe that goes up to about 55, depending on what benefits you have, depending on what deductions you have. In July of 2024, only 5% of your discretionary income for undergraduate loans is expected to go toward your income-driven repayment. Now, that's been 10% in the other income-driven repayment. So what does that mean? It means that, well, I'll just break it down in real practical terms. If you're a single person with $80,000 of adjusted gross income, and remember, that could be 100, that could be 90s. You can make it 6 figures with your gross income. I'm talking about after you take out the tax deductions to get to your adjusted gross. Your payment would be $197. $197. And why is it so low is because not only do you have a higher shield or protected amount, but the amount above that protected amount, you only have to pay 5% on it. I have to say this, for undergraduate loans. For graduate loans, and that's where a lot of people have their major loan debt, right? The Grad Plus program, unsubsidized, that's where federal loans. This is where you see the really, really large debt for dental school and med school and law school and just grad school in general. That's going to be at 10%. So you say, well, what if you have undergrad and grad? Well, then they do a combo. So if like 80% of it was grad and 20% was undergrad, your effective rate's going to be about 9%. So they'll take the portion of your undergrad, that'll go at 5%, and the portion of your grad at 10%, and you'll get an adjusted rate. But still, the bottom line is this makes it really easy for you to still live while you're paying your loan. And remember, the nice thing about these income-driven repayment plans is that there's loan forgiveness at the end of the tunnel. Now, it's a fairly long trek, 20 years for undergraduate loan forgiveness, 25 years for graduate loan forgiveness. But you know what? If you're paying like $195, of course, it depends on your income, but you're not going to pay that much if your income's lower. You learn to live with it. You know, it's not the end of the world. It's like a small amount. Another perk, and this goes into effect in 2024. If your payment is under $12K, you get loan forgiveness in 10 years. Now, not all loans qualify, so that's important. It's federally held loans. Direct subsidized loan qualifies. Unsubsidized qualifies. Consolidated qualifies. Grad loans, grad plus loans. These are federal loans, but, and this is one of the many reasons I don't like it, not the parent plus. I'm sorry. They're always, poor parents who took out parent plus loans and then you don't get access to, even though it is a federal loan, you don't get the benefit of this perk. It's really, really, really sad. If you want to sign up, you go to studentaid.gov/IDR. You're going to see 8 payments to pick from. But once again, the standard or the save plan, to me, are the only two that I would really be considering. So when would you go for the standard one? Remember, this is the one that has a set interest rate, one payment for 10 years. Think of it like a fixed 10-year mortgage. Well, somebody wants to pay off the loan really, really quickly. They don't feel like taking 20 years for undergrad or 25 years for grad school. Doesn't make sense there. If you want to pay the least amount of interest, because once again, it's over 10 years, not 20. Now, the part that's not capitalized is not all interest. It's just all interest beyond your payment. And so if your income's pretty high and you just want to get the payment done sooner, then, standard may still make sense. And I mentioned this before, but I can't stress it enough. You could have a 0 payment some years. Maybe you're just out of college and you're really starting a new business or you're a lower income field. Those 0 payments, they count toward loan forgiveness. You're on the clock for loan forgiveness. As long as you make the payment you need to make after they make the adjustment, that counts toward loan forgiveness. Are there any cons to the SAVE plan? Well, pretty much the con is that it's going to take you longer to pay it off, especially if you're going for loan forgiveness. So the total amount of the interest total may be more than what you would pay with a standard repayment plan. That could be a con. I already mentioned it isn't available to plus borrowers. I would say that's a con. The fact that your monthly payment is going to adjust as your income changes. It's almost like having a variable mortgage. But it's not going to be that much of an adjustment unless you undergo a drastic amount of change in income or salary. What happens if somebody starts out on one plan and they think, oh, SAVE is great, I'm not making that much, and all of a sudden you start making a lot? Well, now you have a tough decision. You could convert to the standard repayment plan and pay it off in 10 years. But just know you're going to lose your loan forgiveness option. What if you convert to the standard payment plan and then, you end up not making the money you thought you're going to make? There's a nice peace of mind factor with SAVE of knowing that at the end of the day, when it's done, whether the balance is paid off or not. Now, at the end, the amount that's written off that you don't pay because it's just canceled, because you fulfill your 20 years undergrad or 25 years grad, you will get a tax bill for that amount. But in the big scheme of things, it's probably not going to be too much. It could potentially be if you have hundreds of thousands of dollars of medical school debt or dental school debt or law school debt. But I see that trade-off as being completely worth it. So that's just a little bit about the SAVE plan. It just is by far a superior plan than any other income-driven repayment plan out there. And so much so to the point that when you're looking at, can I afford college? I think people need to factor in, well, yeah, maybe we will do that federal direct loan, subsidized or unsubsidized, and give ourselves another $6,750 average over 4 years, almost $7,000. I'm an advocate of the loan anyway. It also can, both my kids have really high credit scores, partly because they took this loan out and started making payments, and they're building up credit. There's another benefit to it. So hopefully this was helpful. Once again, quick summation. Why do I like it so much? I like the repayment terms. I like the eligibility of the loans. I like the fact there's no additional requirements. I like the fact that the interest subsidy is going away. And I like the fact that the discretionary income calculation is based on 225% of poverty lines. And I like the fact that they automatically can sign you up and sync everything with your tax return, and you don't run into the problem people ran into the past of forgetting to do it and falling out of favor with the loan. That and many other reasons. Some of the benefits that don't kick in until 2024, the summer of 2024, that has to do more with borrowers who are on a new plan, as opposed to ones that are converting from an existing plan. So yeah, some of the perks, it's true. Some of the perks will kick in next year in July 2024. That's when undergraduate loan payments will go down from 10% to 5% for discretionary income. That's when the possibility of loan forgiveness will be as few as 10 years for those who make under $12,000, or those who have $12,000 or less in undergraduate debt. That's when consolidating won't erase your current forgiveness program. So some of the things will kick in next year. Couple great sources for this. You can always go to studentaid.gov/IDR. NerdWallet has a really good section on this. And both of them have loan calculation simulators, which are pretty awesome because you can just punch numbers in at different incomes and it'll let you know what your payment will be. The federal government has one of those, and so does NerdWallet. And I had fun fooling around and putting in different incomes and seeing how much people would have to pay with those incomes.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Okay, friends, hopefully you'll enjoy the last part of Lisa's interview with Dr. Erik Neubuehl as they discuss student engagement and the importance of student engagement.
You know, I did a college spotlight on East Carolina University for the podcast, and it actually started airing last week. I think I had told you that it was going to be later, but then we had a schedule change. So, you know, by the time this airs, people have had the opportunity to hear my summary of East Carolina University. In my opinion, it's a really hidden gem that a lot of people don't know about, but probably more people should. What do you think are the types of students who would most benefit from going to East Carolina?
Sure. I think East Carolina University is a very friendly place. So people talk to other people. They engage in conversation. We are the middle of the road. We're not the activist school, but we're not the non-activist school, right? So if you're hardcore into, you know, wanting to grow things, you're going to look at other schools that are going to have more of a homegrown culture that talks about community service and value, and we have those strong values, but because we're a big research school, right, we're broad. I think we're a first gen school, so for parents that are either first or second generation, and you know, this first gen stuff is so defined by people, and there's like 20 definitions to define it.
Right.
You know in your heart if you feel like you're a first gen student. If your parents went to college but they went to night school, then you're probably more like a first gen student, right? You know, so. But for those students that feel like, you know, that and the families that feel like, you know, their college experience wasn't quite what it is today, right? And they're really that first generation or second generation going to college. ECU is a tremendous place because you're going to be surrounded by a lot of like-minded faculty, staff, and students that are in that frame. I think the misnomer is that, you know, we are located in Eastern North Carolina, right? And sometimes there's this idea that, you know, we're not very diverse as an institution in terms of our makeup of type of students. And we are hovering around 39% students of color. and all different types of backgrounds. So not just African American. So we're talking about African American, Asian, international students, Hispanic, Latino students. And I think if you're looking for a diverse community, you're going to have one. We do a lot of great work with students from out of state, but we are engaged in regional transformation. It's one of our primary goals, right? So when you look at regional transformation, you're looking at Eastern North Carolina, in specifically, not just a state, but Eastern North Carolina. So if you want to be at a school that you feel like the school is really making a local, more regional impact, right? Because a lot of schools will tout global impact, then East Carolina is going to be that place. We have 400 different community organizations that partner with our Center for Leadership and Civic Engagement that are all up and down Eastern North Carolina. So when there are hurricanes and things like that, we are everywhere with students and faculty and staff working with other communities. And so that's the other thing. Look at the institution's mission and see how that mission really connects to what they say on their tour, right? And every person will know the mission at ECU. We are regional transformation, public service, and student success. So student success kind of touches on that idea that you are first gen and we are big on return on investment. We want to get you a job. We want to tell you the different places that our pirates are working, and we want to use that network, right? So you're successful in that. So that's that student success end. That public service, we are a huge service space. Severe, which is our motto, is to serve. Like, this is the concept of that we're serving other people. That starts specifically on our campus and helping each other and serving our county, right? But then it grows to that regional transformation, which is the third point, is that we are here to transform the region, whether it's healthcare with the medical network, whether it's through engineering with all the great engineering, which is the teachers, which is one of the largest teacher education programs in the state, right? That we are transforming the lives of our community. The community institution need to be as one, right? They're not isolated from each other. And as one is successful, the other is successful, and vice versa. And I think that kind of symbiotic relationship with the community is one that not every institution, large or small, has that, right? And that's okay. And I think if you're looking for that kind of intimate relationship, I think ECU is a great place to come. And again, I've been at 7 different institutions, been at some tremendous schools. Virginia Tech was one of the best schools I worked at. Very few places felt this small for being this size. So if you're one of those people who are nervous about going to a big school, this ECU is a big school. We joke we're the biggest school no one's heard of, right? Because we're this huge university that people, even in Raleigh, think, oh, what are you, 10,000 students, 15,000 students? Like, no, we're 30. We have a medical network, not just a school, right? We have a dental school. We have a giant nursing school. We produce the most nurses in the state. We call them pirate nurses. They are the best at graduation, by the way. You go to graduation and we call out the nurses. They have air horns and streamers and they shoot it off. They are so much fun. But when you look at that type of community, that we are passionate about Pirate Nation. We are engaged in our community greatly, and we are super connected because the footprint of the campus is not that huge for 20,000 undergrads, right? We have a great network, and I think there is an advantage of being at a research institution, because when you change majors, there are a lot more majors to choose from, and you have access to faculty that are doing research. And we have more and more faculty these days that are pulling undergrads into research, not just graduate and professional students. So that's a great opportunity. And I think it's a kind of a hybrid, right? It's that giant school, research school, really connected to the community, though, really small in footprint and feels like it's much smaller than it is, but all of a sudden has Division I sports and a medical network. And so it's a little bit of both, and which is also not everybody's cup of tea, right? They're looking for something very specific.
Right. But yeah, when I was doing my research on ECU, I would come across, well, this school provides all the teachers in North Carolina. This school provides all the nurses and all the, speech. And I was just so impressed. Number one, every single time. And you're right. I mean, I think your graduates really are going back into the communities, like the community that I live in, for example, in North Carolina, and they're helping people, whether it's teaching their kids or helping them become healthy. And I think that's just great. And I was also so impressed on my day at the campus just by how concerned and the staff were with student welfare. You don't see that every place, where it's like so personal and targeted and proactive. And I think that's really commendable. And I think that probably is a touch that makes ECU a big school that feels small.
So we need to have this conversation every day so I can feel good about my job.
Absolutely. I would talk to you all day if I could. But before you get rid of me, every guest of your college-bound kid has to go on the hot seat where we ask you random silly questions just so our listeners can get to know a little bit about you. So my first question is, what is on your travel bucket list? What's a place that you've always wanted to go but haven't gotten a chance to go to yet?
Japan.
Oh, tell me more about that.
I really want to go to Japan. It helps that my wife really wants to go to Japan too.
Oh, that's nice when there's agreement.
We had when my son was younger, we have a really good friend who's Haitian and his wife was Japanese, and she connected with my son on a very personal level because she was a graphic artist. So she would give him these great sets of colored pens, things that we never even knew existed, like these huge sets, and she would teach him how to color and paint and everything. She was teaching him Japanese characters, and so we started learning more and more about the Japanese culture through her, and it got us curious. And I've always been interested in swords. I was a military, I was a military history major. So I always was more fascinated by swords than guns, right? The art of swordplay. And obviously that goes back to samurai, right? And then when my wife and I were both at Florida Atlantic, there was a Murakami Museum, which is this beautiful Japanese gardens museum, bonsai trees. They have their traditional tea ceremonies. It's like 30 acres. It's gorgeous in Boca. And that was our first date. So I took her to the Murakami Museum.
So
She pretended like she had never been there. She was a history major too. And then later I learned that she had been there many times, but she let me feel like I'd shown her something. So we've had these times that we've seen, particularly the Asian culture, but particularly Japanese culture, right, in our lives, and we've never visited. And we visited China, so we were close, reasonably speaking, right? So we'd really love to go visit Japan.
Well, I hope you get to go there soon. That seems like at least 10 good reasons that I heard.
Yes.
Okay, so what kind of TV are you watching these days? Maybe binge watching? What's been catching your interest?
So I will tell you, if you have a middle schooler.
I do have a middle schooler.
And if they're into sports, even if they're not, it's still going to be relevant. But particularly if they're into sports, and even more particularly if they're into basketball, even if they don't play it, they just watch it and stuff, Swagger on Apple TV, which is produced by Kevin Durant, which is based loosely on Kevin Durant's life in middle school into high school. It starts with 8th graders. But the things, like many good shows, the things they deal with is beyond basketball, is relationships, and I'm watching it with my son who's really into basketball. Getting outside your own head when you're on the court or even in school, and not worried about missing the next question or getting the test wrong. Just take the test, study, be in the moment, right? But even talking about there was sexual misconduct with a female friend with a coach, right? And how the kids handled that and how they supported her, but also how their struggle with trying to handle it with, do they tell their parents? Who do they tell? Somebody should tell, but they want to respect her privacy, right? And so all these, and then different dynamics of coaching dynamics and how you deal with young people and how you deal with young people differently than you deal with adults, right? And that's a learned art, right? It just doesn't come naturally. And so all these things happen, as well as the two main characters in Swagger are actually Division I basketball players who have decided to go into acting, and they look high schooly because they're young, right? And they were top high school recruits, so they are legitimate basketball scenes, and they're dunking, like, it's legitimate. So when you bring your younger kid in or somebody who likes basketball, they're like not watching a bunch of actors play basketball.
Right,
they're watching basketball players act, right? And so, but I had it on my watch list for probably a year, right? And then for some reason, about a week ago, I started watching it. And I've not watched, I can't put it down. And now my son just watched 3 episodes last night because he's binging it, and he's trying to catch up to where I am so we can watch the second season together. But it is really a fantastic show. Particularly, it's one of those shows because it is clean enough that you can watch it with your, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old and everything. And then now season 2 seems to be going to high school, so I don't have a review of season 2 yet.
Okay, well, we'll come back to you for that one. That sounds like a great show. I'm going to have to check that out. That sounds just like up my alley. And Mark, the joke is that Mark doesn't know any pop culture, no movies, no TV shows, doesn't.
Okay.
But he might even want to watch Swagger because he loves basketball. So we'll see.
There you go.
might be the guest that puts him over the edge into watching TV.
You just need to tell him that Kevin Durant produced it, because everybody knows Kevin Durant.
I will.
Right?
I will. Yeah, I'll keep that in the memory banks. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I know our listeners are going to learn a lot from this. And if there's ever anything else you want to come and talk about on our podcast, let me know. We'd love to have you.
Well, and you guys, these kind of podcasts are so important. You know, I listen to podcasts. I do a lot of biking, so I'll bike and listen to podcasts all the time because it's a great way to pass the time or on a road trip. But this kind of a podcast where you can really get to talk to different people about the college experience, you know, what it's like to get ready for college, to go to college that first year, right? Because really that whole first semester is so important in transitioning from a parent perspective and a family perspective to the student perspective. So I really appreciate what you and your colleagues do. And so this has been fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to have to talk to you every day and hear that. So
there you go.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Next week in the news, Dave and I are talking about an article in The Atlantic that looks at how it's harder to get into Yale for some of the clubs than it is even to get into Yale University. What's going on with this? Why are these clubs so hard to get in? Do we think that's a good thing? Do we think it's a bad thing? We're going to be talking about all things clubs. We have a very special guest that's going to come on because you're getting a double interview on Thursday's episode. We've got a special guest, Chris Chilbert. He's an expert in AI who works for the federal government, and he's going to answer a question that came in from a listener, a student at Ball State, Dontrell in Indiana. He wants to know how AI is going to impact business analytics and just business majors in general. And we're bringing a special guest on who will answer that question over the next 2 weeks. And then we roll out a whole brand new interview. Two people that are coming on for the third time. They're on in 2018, 2020, and now back in 2023. Rick Clark and Brendan Barnard. And they're partly talking about their new book, new edition of their book, and how it's completely different than the previous one, The Truth About College. But we're also talking about some of the most complicated and complex questions in college admissions today. And that'll be a 3-parter. So we hope you'll join us on Thursday for that. And friends, I close you out with one of my favorite quotes from Aaron Punsami, who's a former admission officer at a bunch of places, including Caltech and UChicago, to name a few. It's a quote I'm sharing with all my students right now and parents when they ask me question about activities. And the quote is this: nobody cares what your activities are at all. All they care about is that you care what your activities are. See you on Thursday, friends. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you'll get every single episode as soon as it is released. If you're interested, there are a few ways you can really support our podcast. You can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can help us pay our staff and our expenses by donating on our website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. I'm the producer of the podcast, but we have a fantastic team of 15. Shout out to our co-host, Dr. Lisa Ruff, Dr. David Williams, Linda Depker, Susan Tree, Vince Garcia, and Julia Esquivel. And to our substitute co-host, Sylvia Borgo. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs are from Kimberly Blass. Lily Parikh manages our Instagram. Our image editor is Talha Khan. Joy Stucker does our website episode updates. And our webmaster is Stylianos Dimitriou. And if you want to have a coaching session with Lisa, Linda, or me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you have a question you want us to answer, or if you have a recommended resource or article you think we should discuss, just send it to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Our favorite method is for you to record your own voice at speakpipe.com/YCBK. By the way, check out our website where you'll find lots of content that is not on any podcast app. Our website is yourcollegeboundkid.com. If you want to learn about other hot admissions topics, follow us on Twitter at YCBK Podcasts. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting again with you every single Monday and Thursday.